Good morning, everybody. Happy to see you all here today. We have a good group um, joining us, so there'll be others coming in while we're getting started. But first, welcome. My name is Doug Dixon. I'm secretary and co-founder of the Encore Network, and I'm looking forward to this as much as all of you are. While we're waiting for others to join us, feel free to go into the chat and let us know where you're coming in from. And let us know if you'd like to be in touch with others in the group, your contact information. Sometimes people like to leave their LinkedIn profile, which is another way to contact and be in touch. Before we get started, I wanted to first of all share some ground rules. If you can keep yourself on mute, that would be really helpful, out of respect for Erin, but also for all of the rest of us. Background noise can be distracting. Secondly, we're going to be using the chat a lot today, so Erin will be providing a lot of information, but also asking some questions that she would like you to respond to, and the chat is the way to do that. So keep the chat open, and you can participate in that way. If you have a question, Erin will be taking questions along the way. Put a Q or a question in front of your comment or your question. That will help us pick it out from other comments. So without further ado, I think we should get started. I want to introduce Erin Eleu, who is a longtime friend and member of the Encore Network. And she is also founder of Agents of Movement, and has been involved in working with others who are in this field, particularly who are interested in not just exercise and physical fitness, but also in movement in general and healthy aging more broadly. And she's done a number of very interesting things, including supporting others who are entering this field. So I'll let her talk more about that, and also talk about why movement, exercise, and overcoming some of the societal biases, right, about or stereotypes about what those of us who are older can actually do. That's the topic for today. So Erin, over to you.
Yes, thanks so much, Doug. I'm excited to be here. Thank you all for joining me. So just a little bit about my background. I work with older adults in senior-centered and senior living communities, teaching various movement programs. I teach a lot about fall resiliency using methods of parkour and teaching how to fall safely, as well as strength balance classes. And then Agents of Movement is my platform. It's my podcast. And I also host webinars for a variety of movement leaders that are reaching the older adult population, because it's all about advocating for active aging, but also understanding the psychosocial aspects that go into working with people and guiding them through movement and keeping them active. So Agents of Movement is my website. You feel free to check it out afterwards, but I feel very passionate about really pushing it back against some of these assumptions we make about aging. And that's one of the things I appreciate most about the Encore Network, is that you're already challenging many of society's assumptions about aging, and you're choosing to stay engaged, contribute your knowledge, your experience, learn new things. Yet, even those of us that are rejecting these outdated ideas about aging, we can still carry some outdated ideas about our bodies and our physical capabilities. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So my first question for you all, and you can use the chat for this, is what messages about aging did you grow up hearing? And think about that for a moment and see if any of these might sound familiar to you. Slow down, take it easy, don't fall, it's all downhill from here. And feel free to chime in. Yeah, going into a rocking chair. Yes, we have these ideas, these perceptions, maybe things that we saw with older people in our lives growing up, or just what society tells us. And over time, those messages can become a part of stories that we tell ourselves. Aging is diminishment. Yes. Yeah. And this is why I love having the chat, because I love to hear what you all have seen and witnessed in your perspectives. And today's conversation isn't really about exercise. It's about possibility and examining the beliefs that we've inherited about aging and movement, and exploring what the research actually tells us, and considering how movement can help us continue doing things that matter most to us, contributing, connecting. Yes, I'm seeing some great things in the chat. Learning, engaging in activities that are meaningful for us. So as we move through today's discussion, I invite you to notice those beliefs that resonate with you, which ones challenge you, and where there may be opportunities to rewrite that narrative. And you all have included some great feedback already in the chat. So let's talk a little bit about the stories that we tell ourselves about aging and movement. So along those lines of what we grew up believing and hearing about aging, what beliefs about aging and movement have you absorbed over your lifetime? And how might that be influencing the beliefs about what's possible today? So that's a question for you all that you can, again, pop into the chat. So again, it's what beliefs about aging and movement have you absorbed in your lifetime? And how might those beliefs act your age? You're too old. Yep. How might those beliefs be influencing what you think is possible today? And some of you have already put some things in the chat, like, I'm too old for that. I hear this a lot, like, I'm too old for that. And that could be jumping. It could be riding a bicycle. People are saying this, that they believe they're too old for a specific activity. Loss of strength and fear of falling. Yep. So there is no age limit to a physical activity. You might have some physical limitations, but age alone is not a limiting factor. Other things that I've heard is, my balance is bad. My knees are bad. Growing old sucks. Dealing with aches and pains is part of getting older. If that's your narrative, how would you show up to a movement space or a movement activity? If you believe, my knees are bad, my balance is bad. And so the language that we use about our bodies and our capabilities is going to directly reflect how we move. So I like to push back with my participants that say things like, my balance is bad, and reframe that to, balance is challenging for me. I'm here to work on balance. Or even, my knees are bad. Okay, so that kind of keeps our body part stuck. Like, it is bad. Can that body part heal? Can it get better? Can it get stronger? Is there an opportunity to maybe explore other activities while a body part is healing? So that language is very important to how we are believing what we're capable of. And those beliefs can feel like facts, but many of the stories we've absorbed come from family, culture, media. Yes, so I hear silver sneakers is a grand opportunity. And even healthcare environments. So that internalized ageism can occur when we begin accepting society's assumptions about aging. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this shows up in our society and culture. This is something I talk a lot about. And if these beliefs didn't matter, this would just be an interesting conversation. But the research really shows that our beliefs about aging influence our physical and cognitive health. So I'm guessing many of you may be familiar with Becca Levy's work and the beliefs about aging and how it can help you expand your lifespan because you have positive views about aging. But recently they found that nearly half of adults over 65 improved physically and cognitively, or both, over a 12-year period. And those with positive beliefs about aging were more likely to improve. So this is really important. And if we start to believe those limiting beliefs, it results in reduced activity. It results in fear of trying new things, lower expectations of ourselves because we think, oh, I'm older now, I shouldn't be doing fill in the blank. We're avoiding challenges. There's this loss of confidence in our movement abilities. So our psychology is shaping our physiology. And what we believe influences how we move, what we attempt, and our views for the future. So I'd just be curious to take a little pause there and see if what's in the chat regards about beliefs about aging and movement that we may have absorbed that I maybe didn't catch coming up. Anything in the chat there, Doug, that you think is worth mentioning that I haven't already called out?
Well, Lynn is saying he had a physical therapist once who asked him, how good do I want to be? As a way of thinking about this.
That's an amazing question, which actually brings up another, thing that we hear in our culture. And we're going to talk a lot about cultural beliefs about aging and how that can shape our own internalized ageism and how it shows up in healthcare, how it shows up in physical activity spaces. And I'd be curious to hear from this group. So again, another question to pop in the chat. Have you ever been told directly or indirectly that an activity wasn't appropriate for someone your age? Yeah, and I would be curious to hear anybody's experiences. Yes. And I'll share some of my own experiences that I've heard from my participants. So a lot of what we see in our culture is that we assume decline as we get older. And this is one of the things I talk to fitness professionals about, in the fitness industry in particular. There are lots of pictures of older adults doing seated exercise with tiny dumbbells. And it drives me crazy. And so it's assuming that people need lighter weights, they need to be seated because you are older. And we've designed exercise programs that are targeted for older adults. And so many times they default to chair and or gentle, low impact, because we assume that maybe older people can't do higher intensity things or they want something more gentle. And so those exercise programs are assuming decline. And then we're not offering those challenges. We're not providing heavier weights. We're not providing things that are going to challenge your body, which is where we improve and keep our capabilities, is with that challenge. And so we have lots of images of older adults doing seated exercise. But another sneaky way that ageism shows up is in things that we don't see older adults doing. So there's predominantly younger people doing specific activities like skateboarding, snowboarding, rock climbing. There's certain sports that you see a lot of younger people doing. And so when we don't see ourselves reflected in that, we don't see older people that look like us engaging in these sports, we can start to think, well, that's not for me. That's, I'm too old for that. I shouldn't be doing that because there's that reflection of somebody that looks like us doing those activities. So it's a sneaky way that ageism shows up. And then another way that it can show up in our society is that we have a lot of language around exercise and movement. And we all know that, I don't think anybody would argue with, like, yes, physical activity is good for us. And we use language such as exercise keeps you young. And it perpetuates our culture's belief that young is good and old is bad. Exercise will not keep you young. It will keep you capable, mobile, able to do the things that you enjoy doing, but it will not keep you young. And that's okay, because everyone here, if you are a living, breathing human being, we are all growing older. So being very cognizant about that language that we use about what exercise and physical activity is doing for us. We can see this with healthcare too. Healthcare providers can say things like, well, aches and pains, that's just expected as you get older. That's an age thing. And something very important is that age is not a diagnosis. So any healthcare provider that says to you, well, that's just growing older, and is not there to help you seek solutions, to comfort, to help you deal with pain or anything that you're experiencing, they're not doing us justice as a human being. Like, if we want to stay engaged in activities and there's something limiting us, to just be dismissed as it's your age, no, that's not acceptable. That's not a diagnosis. We need to be able to push back and advocate for ways to solve anything that's limiting us from the movement that we want to be doing. And then we also see this in leadership too. So again, this is another big criticism that I have about the fitness industry, is that you can do this now. You can just look up stock images of personal trainer, and it will be probably somebody that looks like they are 30 years or younger, and it's usually males. And we don't show people of all ages being leaders in this space. So we can have leaders of all ages be personal trainers, and it doesn't have to be personal trainers. It could be a dance instructor. It could be a rock climbing instructor. So we need to show that leadership is possible in movement spaces, and it's very much encouraged. I highly encourage and promote people of all ages to be movement leaders. And another way that this shows up is just in everyday life, is that we believe that old equals weak. How do we see this? So we see an older person carrying something and we instantly want to be like, oh, let me carry that. Let me help you with that. Let me get that for you. And there's this assumption that you are not able to carry your whatever it is. And it's well intended, right? It's coming from a good place. However, it's this belief that people have that older people are not capable of doing things and that they need help. And maybe you do want help, and that's fine. That's one thing. And I'll share a little story that happened to me. And I was working as an activities director for a senior center. We were moving senior centers. So we were moving from one location to another location. We had a gentleman, John, and he's in his 80s, and he's super engaged in the community. He writes for the newsletter. He wrote a book. He's very active, knows business owners. He's just a super connected guy. He delivers newspapers to all the local businesses. So regularly he's hauling boxes of newspapers to businesses. So he helped us with the move. He helped load items into trucks and trailers to get them moved over to this new location. Time and time again, I would hear people say, "Oh, John, let me get that box for you. Oh, let me take that. You don't need to be doing that. I'll get that for you." And in fact, I had one volunteer that took me aside, and he's like, "Are you really gonna let John help us move all this stuff? And like, he shouldn't be doing that." And I was like, "He's absolutely capable. I'm not going to take that away from him." And that's how he's going to keep his capability, because he's doing things like that. That's a version of lifting weights. It doesn't have to be in a gym. So we see this a lot. And again, it can become internalized. Like, maybe I shouldn't be lifting heavy things. I'm getting older now. I'm getting weaker. And it will absolutely reflect in how we move throughout our lives and as we age. And so this leads me to my next question for you to put in the chat is, what messages do you think society sends about what older adults can and cannot do physically? I shared with you what I've seen, and I don't know if anybody, I'm guessing some of you might have popped some things in the chat as well. So I'll take a moment. Doug, is there anything in the chat that is worth calling out?
Yes, Norman says it's important to find something that makes you sweat, or at least walk a bit faster than usual in order to make gains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Eileen also says osteoporosis and arthritis diagnoses can impact actual movement for fear of losing what mobility already exists. Do you have a thought?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's real things that can change how we move in a space. Pain, arthritis, a diagnosis will change our movement patterns. It's an opportunity to be curious, is how I would frame it, and see how you can best work with that diagnosis and those physical processes. So arthritis doesn't mean you should stop moving. It means that you might have to be more cognizant about what causes you pain, what doesn't cause you pain, find ways that keeps it not necessarily always pain-free with arthritis, but at a tolerable pain level. And even with osteoporosis, it's definitely don't move. It's okay, we have to be very thoughtful about how we move to keep our bones safe. And there's plenty that we can do with osteoporosis. It, if we have a lot of fear around it, then sometimes we limit ourselves too much. Yes, we want to be knowledgeable about how to move to keep our bones safe, but it definitely does not mean don't move. And we still can challenge ourselves within those diagnoses. So we want to make sure we understand if there's fear and now how we can comfortably move and still find challenge. So it's not to say that we're never going to have anything that limits us. We will, but it doesn't mean that we stop moving. It means that we find different ways to move.
James says, when you're younger, it's no pain, no gain.
Mm-hmm.
You're older, there's a need to focus on recovery.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I don't love no pain, no gain. I feel like it turns a lot of people away that don't, that you can absolutely have gains without pain. And there's people out there that do not love exercise. They do not love to challenge themselves. And if we come up with that messaging, it just turns a lot of people off. So yeah, you do not have to have pain to have gains.
Lynette comments, I'm single, own a home, and sometimes have to get on a ladder to do something, and her neighbors freak out.
Yes, yes, yeah. And that is something that you shouldn't be doing that. You're too old for that. That's something that our society believes. And it's not an age thing that limits you from climbing on a ladder. I mean, if you're having serious vertigo, yeah, maybe you should probably not be climbing on a ladder, regardless of what age you are. But if we've been doing these things and we've consistently been moving like this and climbing on ladders, then it's far less risky for us to be doing that. So my next question for you all is, what forms of movement make you feel the most capable and most energized? And it doesn't have to be exercise. So for those of you that love lifting weights and you love being in the gym and doing aerobics classes, I love, you're my people. I love that too. And it doesn't have to be that. It does not absolutely have to be gym type exercise to keep us moving. Dancing. Yes, somebody said hiking in nature. Yeah. Cycling. And it can even be things like cooking, playing an instrument. These are all things that hula hoop, I love it. These are all things that we have to use our body for. So, and our bodies are really our vehicles for experiencing life, and our bodies are meant to move. So when we think about what we want to do now, I don't know if you're hearing a lot of background noise. I have a garbage truck outside, so.
No, we don't.
Okay, perfect. Yes, so high intensity exercise, gardening. Absolutely. These are all things that are keeping us active. We're using our bodies for these activities. Volunteering, playing with grandkids, hiking and traveling and walking around a new city. That's all things that we need our bodies for. So being able to move throughout our day and finding ways to load our body and ask demands of our body throughout the day is really important for staying capable. If you like gym type activities, by all means, keep doing those. But when we continue to move, it's building our confidence, our independence. It brings us joy. You've all shared things that are bringing you enjoyment into your life. And we live in a culture, in a society where it's very easy not to move. We have so many affordances. And you think about something as simple as opening any kind of door these days. You can do it with just a push of a button. And we're taking away movement that our bodies used to do. So we kind of have to be more purposeful about how we move throughout our day. And we almost have to find those opportunities to move and not use those affordances like elevators, escalators, avoiding escalators, yes, so that we are taxing the body, carrying our groceries to the car, things like that. They all are movement throughout our day. So it's really stacking movement opportunities throughout our day, and not always just thinking your time to move is when you have an exercise class or you're doing this one exercise thing. It doesn't have to be confined to that. And getting up and down from the floor, things that you want to have, the abilities that you want to have for a lifetime, you start doing those now when you're totally physically able to. And it's making deposits into your physiological 401k is what I call it. So you're making those movement deposits so that down the line, your older self can draw from that. If there's those times you need to get up and down from the floor, you need to carry something, and we don't have those affordances to help us, or the escalator broke, we have to take the stairs. We still have those capabilities. So it's being very purposeful about finding opportunities to move throughout our day. Yes, somebody said they had a neighbor that walks up and down the halls. And so which actually brings up a really good, makes me think of something that I've seen working at senior living community. So I teach classes at an assisted living, senior living community. And I teach a class that's primarily standing. We do parkour type movements. So getting people to locomote around their ways and their space in different ways. It is a more challenging class. And I go around and I recruit people for the class. So I knock on doors, I recruit the residents. Hey, we're doing this class. Do you want to come? And what I found was there was a trend that when I knocked on the doors and people would come to the door and answer the door, and they would say, and they would come and talk to me. The people that walked to their door were the ones that would come to this more challenging class. Sometimes you knock on a door and they're just they're watching TV, come in, and they never leave the chair, they never leave the couch to answer the door. So answering the door was just a really simple activity, walking from your couch to the door. And it sounds so simple, but these things really add up. And those people were also the people that made it a point to take the stairs every day. To just, and they would tell me, I just make sure I go up and down the stairs at least once a day. There was stairs in the senior living, they can go down to the lobby area and back up. And these are the people that could do the more challenging classes because they made it a point to keep that activity as a part of their day-to-day lives. And this is a call for a lot of you to, I'm guessing a lot of you are already active because a lot of you have already shared your activities in here, what you're doing. And I'm a very big proponent of, as I mentioned earlier, of having leaders of all ages show up in movement spaces. And because we're showing what's possible as we get older to our peer group, but we're also creating those activities for our future selves. And these are some of the people that I've had on my podcast that I like to highlight. So I have a lady, Susie Vanderlip. She teaches Zumba classes. And she takes her classes and does flash mobs in grocery stores and at a local aquarium, and she has it filmed. And she told me when I interviewed her, she said, so many times I get people coming up to me. She's got people from her 60s to their 90s taking her Zumba class. And she says, I have people coming up to me like, I didn't know older people can move like that, which again is ageist, but at least she's showing what's possible. Like she's bringing her people out into the community and showing them be joyful and dancing at all ages. I've also featured a guy locally that has started the Boomer Rock Climbing Club. So he's a retired physicist, and he decided to start this rock climbing club. So he goes to a local climbing gym and works with adults over 50, giving them climbing skills indoors. And then he takes them outside and they climb outside. And when they climb outside, it's like this natural community where all ages come and climb with them. So he started that. And then I have interviewed a lady, Hildy Fine, and she's in Wisconsin, and she teaches low-flying trapeze for older adults. So she has women from their 60s to their 90s, and she's teaching them circus arts. She's in her 70s. She is a performer for circus arts. She does low-flying trapeze. But all of these people are showing what's possible as you get older. They are being leaders in their space. And just by offering these activities, they're saying, this is for you. You are invited to be here. And there is some helpfulness when you have that peer-to-peer interaction. Because when they see people like Hildy, the low-flying trapeze performer, she has told me time and again, she's like, women would come up to her and be like, oh, but do you think I'm too old for that? And am I strong enough? And she would say, you build the strength when you do the activity, and you're not too old. So some people need that reassurance to show that these activities are still accessible to them. So I'm curious if anyone on the call is some sort of movement leader or involved in helping others stay active, and what you may be doing. And it could be you lead neighborhood hikes. It could be that you're a personal trainer. And I would say, even if you're moving, you're still leading by example, right? People are watching, and when we show people that you can stay active at all ages doing all kinds of different activities, that is one way of leading. It doesn't have to be in a formal class. So
I wonder also if there are people on the call who want to be leaders in that way.
mm-hmm. Yes, and that's part of this conversation. Yeah. Oh, Carlos, yes. I know Carlos personally. He is a personal trainer. Yes. And that is something that, Lori, yes. Okay, great. That is something that I would encourage all of you to mobile personal training. Excellent. Yes. And fitness classes for a school district. Yeah. Thank you, Louis. So I hope I am planting the seed for some of you that are on this call to think about ways you might want to be a movement leader in your space. And it could just be as simple as you're inviting friends to come hike with you. You're inviting friends to go on a bike ride. I found so many times people want to be active, but they don't want to do it by themselves. And so that's just another really simple way that we can be leaders and lead by example, is just inviting people to come along with us for the activities that we enjoy. And so let's talk a little bit about the research around aging. So I talked a little bit about this, and we talked about some of those stereotypes and those things that we've heard. It's more fun with others. Yes, is that aging means decline. That's the myth. Aging is an inevitable decline. And we're not always going to be able to do everything that we did when we were younger, but it's not this like we are this incapable human beings as we get older. We are totally capable of doing many of the things that we enjoy. And nearly half of adults improved over time. So this is part of Becca Levy's work. So what she found is that 45% improved physically or cognitively. And positive age beliefs really predicted that improvement. So if you're working with people and you are a personal trainer, you're leading people in any type of movement exercise class, I always think you're training more than bodies. We're training beliefs. And that comes before training and looking at somebody's bodies. We need to understand the belief system that people have about what their bodies can do before they can make changes or improvements. And the other part about that research is that a lot of times we look at averages. On average, people are doing this, but we're not looking at the individual's potential. So there is every individual's potential for gaining capacity is unique to them. So if we just look at averages, we're not seeing the humans in front of us or understanding ourselves as our own unique human being that has had different experiences, different things that we may be dealing with physically. And there is a significant capacity to grow later in life. So those are the things that the research has shown time and again. And we have to look at those individual trajectories rather than averages. And many older adults are getting better. They're not getting worse. And we need to keep that in mind for ourselves and for our friends, family, loved ones, anybody that we may be serving. And that confidence in our movement is developed through our experience, through continuing to move. That's how we stay confident. That's how we stay capable. So if improvement remains possible throughout life, this is a question for you all to pop in the chat. If improvement remains possible throughout life, how might that change the way you think about your own future? And I'll give everyone a moment to think about that. And maybe you all have already know that improvement is possible throughout life. That's nothing new to you. More hopeful, right? Yes, because we're all on this inevitable journey of getting older. We hope to grow older. So if we know that we can still see, that there's still improvement, there's still possibility as we get older, it helps us on this journey that we have of getting older. Can always improve. Just, yeah. Right. Yeah. Excellent. So let's talk about rewriting the narrative. And this could be your own narrative or helping to rewrite the narrative that our culture has around aging. Comparing is a killer. Yes. Have you ever heard of compare and despair? I love that term. Compare and despair. Don't compare and despair. So is there anything that you've given up as you've aged that you may want to reconsider? And I'll just pose that out there. If anybody has maybe thought about something differently, like, I used to love this and I no longer do that. I no longer, maybe there's some fear around it. And we can also think about our loved ones, people that we care about, friends that maybe have given up on things because they think like, oh, well, that's no longer for me. I'm older now. I can't do that. I shouldn't be doing that. So some of that narrative we hear around the people that we love and care for, which can be hard to hear. So when it comes to rewriting the narrative, I think it's important for those of us that are active to show ourselves being active in what we're doing. It's important to see people of all ages engaging in activities. So we don't have just young people doing certain activities. We need to see that there are people of all ages doing a variety of activities. Water skiing, yes. There's a woman in her 60s that does like a skateboarding champion that does competitive skateboarding. And that's surprising because you don't think you don't think women in their 60s do that, but they can absolutely do that. So roller skating, yes. Yeah. Roller skating, yeah, all great. Snowshoeing. And if you are leaders in this space and you are leading movement, I would say definitely show pictures of yourself. Social media, send me your pictures for Agents of Movement. I'd be happy to share those because we can't get enough. I don't believe we can get enough of those pictures of showing that there's people of all ages to show up as leaders for that. So it's really paying attention to our limiting self-talk, seeing if there's anything that we're saying to ourselves that we believe, based on my age, I shouldn't be doing this. Is that a fact, or is there something actually, a real physical limitation that may be keeping you from doing an activity, not age alone? And instead of saying things like, I'm too old for that, I wonder how I can safely explore that. And we're creating those physical demands daily. So that we have opportunities to move throughout the day. And we're using our bodies to move in meaningful ways for us. And the last strategy is to always practice what you want to keep. So if we want to be able to get up and down from the floor, we practice that. If we want to be able to carry our own groceries, put the luggage in the overhead bin, carry small children or small animals, climb stairs. It doesn't have to just be physical, learn new skills. Anything like that. We have to continue to practice that because if we stop practicing, then fear grows. So when we stop doing any kind of physical activity, we're feeding fear. We might not think about it that way, but and maybe this has happened to somebody. I know this has happened to me where I realized I wasn't doing certain movement. And then when I was asked to do that, it was terrifying for me. And I realized, oh, it's just because I haven't done it in so long. It's very fearful. It scares me. And it used to be something I used to love doing as a kid, like being upside down. I loved being upside down as a kid, hanging from bars, handstands. And as an adult, that felt like terrifying. Yeah. So it had to get back into like, can I do a handstand? Can I feel comfortable doing it? Can I be comfortable being upside down? But I realized because I had spent so many years from being away from playing and being upside down that it was scary. So we feed the fear, the more we avoid it. And then I'd be curious if anyone has a movement challenge activity or an experience that you want to explore in the coming year. And I'll let everyone think about that for a moment. Um, I I'll talk a little bit about parkour while I let everyone reflect on that. I teach parkour for older adults in senior living communities, outside playgrounds, and parkour is definitely a sport that you think of young men doing, but it's really about how we can move around our spaces in different ways, how we can land without having major impact, how we can go over under things. It's providing movement confidence. So parkour, people would think like, oh, you shouldn't be bringing parkour. Maybe it's dangerous. There's a way that we can bring movement practices for all ability levels and not just say, well, that's just for younger people to do, but it's a matter of exploring that.
Can you
I,
explain what core is for those who don't know?
yeah. So parkour at the core of parkour is moving around your space in different ways. And you might see this a lot and it can look like stunt double stuff. People are jumping down from high levels, jumping from from a bar to bar. They're swinging on things. They are crawling. They're climbing up things. It's a lot of different movement activities, jumping, but they're also landing safely. So it's movement variety. But a lot of those people that are doing parkour have a lot of what I call physical literacy, meaning that they have so much variety in what they do that they are very capable movers. And that's what we want. We want to be very capable movers so that we just don't practice one movement activity. It's common for us to have a sport that we love, whether it's hiking or biking or weightlifting. But if that's all we do, then we're missing out on a big range of activities to do. So I that's why I love parkour is that it's movement variety and kids do this naturally. If you have a little kid in your life, they look for ways to climb up on things. They're not going to just step down from something. They're going to jump down from something. And then we lose that as adults. Like that we grow out of that as adults. And it's a very playful, fun way to move with our environment. So the environment is our teacher. The environment is our space that teaches us how to move our bodies. And it's not going into a physical space like a gym. It's just learning to observe your environment as a way to move.
Charlene is asking if
Yes.
you have recommendations about how to find a place that focuses on parkour in our areas.
Yes. So this is something that I'm working on getting growing in the community. So I maybe what we can do, Doug, is I can share some parkour videos and things that I've done with my colleagues to give people ideas on ways that you can incorporate parkour in your day-to-day. Classes are hard to come by, but I would say, depending on where you're at, you can email me, Erin at Agents of Movement, and I'd be happy to see if I can find a colleague or somebody that I know in your area that's doing that. But it is really mostly going to be about finding ways to move throughout your own space. It's hard to find classes that do that, but I'd love to see more of that grow. All right, so I just want to go back to movement challenge or experience you want to explore in the coming year. Did we get in? I saw some things coming in and I wasn't able to
Um,
see them.
there's doing a mother-daughter trip to Spain
Mm.
in the fall and working on improvement walking distances so she can better keep up. Um, Walking trails, is this the same as exercise? This is a question I think about parkour, exercise
Hmm.
trails where people stop and there's equipment there. Is that something that you would encounter?
Yeah, I've seen that before. It's not quite the same. You can definitely use that, sometimes you see around like walking paths, there's like bars that you can do pull-ups on or like a balance beam. And that is part of it. You can absolutely use some of those things for, moving in different ways. Um, it, yeah, but parkour is really taking picnic tables, benches, staircases, and finding ways. Or is there other ways that you can move with those objects without just going straight up and down stairs? Or how might you engage with a staircase differently? What would you do with a picnic table rather than sit on it? So it invites a lot of creativity and playfulness. And I'd be happy to share with you, and maybe that's something, again, we can put in the follow-up, some things that I've created and my colleagues have created. It's a fun way to move. So I'm a big proponent of parkour.
And there are a number of requests for information about your podcast, about your
Mhm.
website, and so on. And we will share. I see that you put that in the chat, but we will share that information also in the follow-up email. Well, somebody's
Yes,
backtracking trip,
backtracking. Yes,
I should say.
excellent. Yeah, yeah, I
Uh,
love it.
and let's see, Lewis says he's doing 75 hard, 75 consecutive days of two 45-minute workouts a day, one outside and one inside with weights.
Excellent.
I take 1 day rest and a week from the weights during that day and focused on stretching. So he's got
Yeah.
a program.
Yes, that's excellent. I think Lewis is also the in-home personal trainer, so that doesn't that doesn't surprise me. That's awesome. Yes.
There's a question.
Mhm.
Do you know if there are benefits to walking backwards?
Yes, I encourage you to walk backwards. Um, Reasoning being, it's great for balance. It's great for being able to roll through your feet. When you walk backwards, you can go toe, ball, heel, and starting to articulate through your feet. And it sounds a little counterintuitive, but walking backwards can also help us with walking forwards. And walking backwards practicing doing it in a controlled environment is a great way, because if you ever get in a situation where you are forced to go backwards, something stops you, you have that ability. So it's walking backwards is a great skill to continue to practice and do. Um, so I definitely recommend walking backwards, which is, again, something that's easy to do throughout your day. It's not something that you need to go into a gym for. So we don't have to look at activity as something that's specific for a class or a certain location. It's something that's infused throughout our day. Okay. And I just want to leave you with a few takeaways that just to recap some of the things that we've already talked about, is that aging is not a fixed decline narrative, and that our ability is not solely determined by our age. And a lot of the expectations we have about aging are going to influence our outcomes. And really, movement is a way to build confidence. It's a way to build connection. It's a way to see what's possible for ourselves as we get older, and we can continue to grow and learn and contribute through life through movement is a great way to do that. And one of my favorite quotes that I use over and over again is by Mark Middleton, and it is, "We are limited more by our beliefs than by age itself." So I'll say it again. We are limited more by our beliefs than by age itself. Um, so that's something that I think about a lot, and with the people that I work with myself. Am I limiting myself based on age alone? So ways that you can stay connected, and I see some resources, simple ways to add a lot of variety and movement into your day. That's a great question. Some of the stuff I have on there, so my colleagues and I have created a Parkour for Older Adults YouTube channel, and I will share that with Doug, so any of you that are here on this call will have that as a resource. And it is a way to invite some creativity in your day, but also different ways to challenge and fun ways to move your body. And maybe what we need to do is have a part 2, and it'll be a parkour at home session, which I have taught before, in ways that we can move around our house, in creative ways we can move around our house. So agentsofmovement.com is my website. I have, yes, important not to sit for too long. Yeah, and sitting on the floor is a great way to, get that movement variety into your day. My podcast, you can follow the podcast. I talk to a lot of movement leaders, as well as people that are educators, innovators in this space. So I've talked to a little bit about some of the people that I've had on my podcast, Hildy Fien, who does low flying trapeze, and Arlo, who does the Boomers Rock Climbing Club. So it's to give people inspiration on ways that we can keep people moving. And then, so that's the podcast. I have webinars that I do pretty much every month where I have some kind of educator leader in the space that's teaching those of us that are movement leaders. And even if you are curious about being a movement leader, you are more than welcome to join. So I'm doing a webinar this month with Robert Linkle. He is a leader in advocating for strength training for older adults, talking about how to deal with common physical limitations that we may come across as we get older. And then this fall, I'm having a Learning Lab series. And this is something that I just posted on my website under events. It's going to be a expert-led discussion. So it's going to be kind of like this, where it's going to be interactive and have peer-to-peer conversations to talk about ways that we can create meaningful movement experiences for people. Talking about belonging and fostering connection in movement spaces, how we challenge ageism in physical activity spaces, and creating environments that promote fun and purpose and participation. These are topics that I find aren't being talked about a lot for those of us that are movement leaders, whether you are a personal trainer or a hiking leader. We talk about what we are bringing to people, but we're not talking about how we bring it to people so that they want to stay engaged in movement and in staying physically active. So I've invited Doug to be a part of those discussions. So I'm just finalizing the lineup right now, but that's coming in September. And it's a great opportunity to learn, talk to peers in this field, and learn from each other so that we are bringing really meaningful experiences to our communities and the people that we serve. Because it is so important. We all know, many of you here, that it is important to stay active. And we need to be very intentional about how we promote activity and the ways that we do that keep people engaged and feel like they want to keep doing that. So I invite you to sign up. There's an interest list that I'm gathering. So if you're interested in being a part of that and joining in on those discussions, you can sign up for that on my website. And I am most active on LinkedIn. I do have Instagram and Facebook, but I'm most active on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter that I put out every week, and it's from myself and colleagues that are talking about various psychosocial aspects of movement and how we address ageism, how we keep people active, and all those important topics that I don't hear talked about enough. So I invite you to sign up for the newsletter if you're interested in staying involved in that conversation. Okay, and with that, I would love to just open it up for any other questions or comments you all have. Anything that sparked any kind of maybe different thoughts, beliefs that you might have had, anything that was else that you want to contribute. I always love hearing people's own experiences on where they might see society is showing ageism around physical activity.
Erin, while people
Yeah.
are thinking about questions, you mentioned that one should be concerned only about ability and not age in terms of movement. But for those who do have limitations on their ability, how do you recommend that we think about assessing risk in terms of, I mean, fear is a big problem, right? Fear, emerges from risk. How do you suggest that we think about risk as it relates to the potential for further injury for those who have limited ability?
Yes, that's a great question. So when we think about risk, we want to think about a couple things. One thing is there's the risk of not doing anything, right? There is a risk of not challenging yourself and choosing not to move. There is a risk in that. And many times we can think that we're playing it safe. I have this injury, I have this thing, so I'm not going to move to be safe. There is a risk to that. And the risk being is that we become less mobile, we become weaker, we lose our abilities. And then there's the risk of engaging in activity. There's always going to be risk in engaging in activity. There's no way you can make activity 100% risk-free. So we just have to know that, yes, there is a risk. When you get in your car, there is a risk that you're going to get in a car accident. Like, this is just part of life. There is risk. But what we want to think about is, how do we reduce the risk? There's never going to be a certain 100% chance that we're not going to injure ourselves or something happens. So we want to be looking at how can we best reduce the risk. And a lot of that can just be with education, right? So in the case of osteoporosis, we want to know where we have osteoporosis, what type of movement patterns might we need to do to take care of those body parts? If it's in our spine, how do we need to be using our spine so that we can still engage, but we know the proper ways to move that aren't going to make anything worse? So it's exploring within that space of what we can do and how can we help to lower the risk, knowing that it's not going to go away completely. And interestingly enough, fear is a risk factor. Having fear around movement increases your risk of injuring yourself with movement. We see that with falling. People that are fearful of falling are at a much higher risk of falling. So we have to lean into that fear in a way that is comfortable for us, and kind of push against those boundaries in a way that we are in control and that we feel safe, and we are kind of nudging our comfort zone in ways that feel okay for us. So that's what I think about risk. I think so many times we look at the risk of moving, but we don't look at the risk of not moving. And there's a risk to playing it safe and not moving.
Lynn asks a related question, which is, how do you differentiate between actual limitation and mindset limitation?
That's a great question. So I think it's really it's exploring one. I mean, there might be things that it's just very real. Like, you have a broken arm, you have a broken leg. Like, it's very clear. Like, that is a physical thing you're dealing with right now. And so that's one thing, but part of it is examining those beliefs. Are you making assumptions that because you have X that you can't do certain things, or do you know that for a fact? Or do you know that maybe some of these things are short-lived? So it's really understanding to get to actually move and challenge your bodies. Can I really not do this thing, or is it just because I think I can't do this thing? So finding those things, like I talked about going upside down, like, you could do a downward dog and you're upside down. So are there ways that you can do those things that feel comfortable to you? And then you start building up that confidence that you can start challenging yourself. So I always say, like, meet yourself in your comfort zone. That's where we build confidence, is when we're comfortable. If we instantly start going out and doing something that we're not comfortable in, we instantly are fearful, and now we've increased our risk. Start within your comfort zone. Get super duper comfortable doing a certain activity, a movement, and then see if you can take it a little further. Like a stair. Like, can you go down a 1-inch stair? Super comfortable. You don't think about it. Great. Can you go down a 2-inch step? So things like that we start gradually increasing that challenge.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Erin. This has been not just enlightening, but also inspiring. We really appreciate all of the information that you provided, and all the suggestions. And we'll be providing more information in a follow-up email probably early next week, since it's already Thursday, and a copy of the recording so that we can listen to this again and share it with others who need to have access to this information. Next, in July, that's next month already, July 21st, we'll be having our next coffee chat in the This Healthy Aging series, and we're going to focus on menopause, which is a very interesting topic, not just from a healthy aging perspective, but also its surprising links to Encore, and that's what we'll be talking about in July. In 2 weeks, maybe it's next week, July. When is June 17th? Is that 2 weeks? I don't know. I've lost track of time. So on June 17th, we'll be having our third annual Affinity Group Summit. And that's an opportunity for you to do three things. One is learn more about our affinity groups. If you participate in one or two or three, you can learn about all of the others. You can also learn about our draft 3-year strategy, which we're in the process of developing, and we want to connect that directly to the work of our affinity groups. And it's also an opportunity for you to provide input, since this is not a final document yet. And finally, on July 15th, we have the pleasure of a conversation with Andrew Seaman, who is editor for jobs and career development at LinkedIn. And Lem Lloyd is going to facilitate a conversation with Andrew around all the things that have to do with job search, that have to do with the job market, that have to do with using LinkedIn for however you use it. So this is going to be a very informative topic, very timely, and we encourage all of you to join us then as well. So thank you all for joining us today. Thanks, Erin, again for this very inspiring, very informative session. And look for a follow-up email early next week with all of the information that has been shared today and ways to stay in touch with Erin and her work. So thank you all and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Doug.